will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. And someday, the high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. In the time
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We hope everybody is paying attention to their New Year's resolutions, at least trying to keep track of most of them. We've got a great show tonight with two women I've known for years, part of the artistic community in the Twin Cities for a while, and they've been involved with a very contentious fight with the Line 3 tar sands pipeline. They are currently in the process of raising some money, as a handful of them were arrested this summer and thrown in jail in Wadena, Minnesota, by the local authorities. And we're going to talk about the efforts on behalf of stopping the pipeline, what they need to do to raise some money to pay for their lawyers' fees. And we have the real pleasure of having a worldwide debut tonight of the old gospel song Down to the River to Pray by the reunited Woman Who Cook. We have on the line first the woman who was arrested this summer, who is also the prime mover of putting the Women Who Cook together 30 years ago, Miss Marion Moore. Marion, great chatting with you. We haven't talked in years. Tell us first about the issue, why the song is being released, and then we're going to go back into the great history of Women Who Cook.
Great, thanks. Thanks for inviting me, Paul. I've been involved in the fight against Line 3, I would say rather peripherally since the beginning, about 7 years ago, when this very bad idea came to the Public Utilities Commission. And all of those good, reasonable thinking was ignored by our regulatory process. And so in late November of 2020, in the midst of a global pandemic, Enbridge started to do its laying of 330 miles of pipeline across treaty territory and the pristine waters, over 22 river crossings, hundreds of wetlands and lakes, wild rice beds. And so that started in late November. I started going up there at that time, and beginning with Aiken County, and on December 14th, 2020, along with 21 other water protectors, I was arrested and put in jail for 24 hours for merely trying to pay attention, to have people pay attention, and to where all other methods had failed to get this pipeline stopped. We were not successful in stopping the pipeline, but we were very successful through the indigenous leadership of this movement of educating a lot of Minnesotans and all around the world about treaty rights, about climate, and about protecting the water.
And along with you in that cell was a woman who's been at the forefront of this and so many other issues which she so powerfully leads. Minnesota's number one water protector, the great Winona LaDuke.
Yeah, so Winona actually wasn't with me in the first jail. She was arrested later. We were both charged after the fact on a January 9th ceremony at one of the crossings. But she then, with Barb With and 5 other women, were arrested last summer in July, and that's where they had to spend a couple of days in jail in Wadena. But I want to tell you, Paul, because you'd appreciate this as a musician, those of us who have songs going around in our heads all the time.
All the time.
It was in late November 2020 when we were trying, Winona and I were like having conversations, okay, how do we organize this to get people to show up, right, in this obscure northern Minnesota region? And so we're like, okay, how about 10 o'clock every morning? We're going to be down in the river praying, down to the river to pray. At the Mississippi River, there was a major crossing, which was one of the first things Enbridge tried to do to get that out of the way before people caught on.
Sure.
So then I'm literally taking a bath, Paul, and I'm like, down to the river to pray. That needs to be our anthem. And so when I got arrested, I was singing that song in Tupelo in December 2020. And in fact, you'll appreciate this, when the all of the discovery file came from my lawyer, there were body cams from cops of us all singing down in the river to pray. So then Winona, when she was in jail, started singing it, and Barb can tell you more about that story.
The song, the old gospel tune, I did a little research. It actually goes back to 1867. It's one of the most beautiful melodies ever written. And the lyrics that I had the privilege to listen to, that we will be doing the worldwide debut tonight at the end of the show on the Wall of Power Radio Hour, is just fantastic. I love all the karmic connections here with the river, with water, with baptism, bathing in the river. It's such a spiritual element to the whole thing. Who actually rewrote the lyrics to the song?
I would say it was a collaborative effort. When they were in jail in Wadena, Barb has a great story about the jailer there, and I'll let her tell that story. But then we were just in the last week or so on a Google Doc, adding this, changing it in this way and that way. And I love what you bring up about the water, and that, because one of the rallying cries of this movement is that water is sacred and water is life. And I think this song does embody that beautifully. But instead of a Christian allusions, it's more the studying Anishinaabe way, and stop that pipeline now, stop the black snake now.
Well, it's a psalm to God and the gods, and it's such. I can't wait to hear it. We're actually, I'm going to hear it for the first time at the end of the show. But now, what I love about it, Marion, you and I have known each other for years, and you've been.
We can even say decades, Paul.
And you hosted a great show on KTCA called Night Times Variety, or you produced it, I believe. I think.
I produced it with Kathy Riley, and you were on it with Cats Under the Stars. Was that what it's called?
Yes, that's correct. And you also had, if people can go back and find some of the stuff, you had Leo Kottke on, and Rio Nito, and Michael Johnson. Willie Murphy, I believe, Peter Ostruccio. Yeah. It's a beautiful time capsule.
It was 83 shows over 3 years from 1980 to 83. And I think it was way before its time, in all modesty and humility, I would say.
Well,
and in 1982, we can count 40 years ago, one of the things we did was we would, in order to sort of present local and regional musicians in different ways, we would have theme shows. And Prudence Johnson and I were meeting at Pumpernicks to talk about that on the West Bank. I remember it clearly.
Right, sure.
And we decided we needed to do an all-woman show with all women musicians, instrumentalists, singers, etc. And in April 1982, we did that for the first time. And then we did a big Guthrie sold-out show in the following October. And then in 1988, we ended up, this was my dad's big idea, but going to what was then the Soviet Union for the Soviet Peace Tour.
Wow.
So when Barb With called me up and said, I really want to make a recording of Down in the River to Pray, I was like, oh, well, let me bring some of my favorite singers in the world who will be very enthusiastic to join. I would have gotten a dozen of them, but for COVID, so I just invited Mary Jane Alm and Prudence and Geraldine Steele, and, these are women who have spent thousands of hours singing together, and it was so just, I wrote them a text this morning how much last night it filled my heart to have them there with their gifts. And Winona was there and Barb was there, and we all got to sing as a choir, and they got to sing their parts. And this is one of the beautiful things about this movement, is that it's holistic and it's culturally oriented and it's spiritually grounded and inclusive. So last night was a beautiful embodiment of that. I posted on Facebook this morning, Paul, that water protection happens in a lot of venues, even at Winterland Studios.
Well, what I loved, you just mentioned the vocalists on this project, all friends of mine, all A-list. When I went back to look at the documentary from your tour to the Soviet Union, I noticed my hero playing piano, of course, is not with us anymore, but with us in spirit. And I know she would have been there had she been with us to call her. But Jeannie Peterson, the matriarch of the Minnesota music community, played keyboards in that group. Who were the other members back then?
She was in her 60s. She was in her 60s during the Soviet tour, and we thought she was so old, and now we're all in our 60s. So,
you know,
kind
it's
of
funny.
hilarious.
I love Jeannie. I went to her 90th birthday party at the Old Log Theater, and we got to be really good friends over the years. And of course, I know the whole family. And I remember I had a phone call. Somebody called me and said, "Hey, I need a piano player at the Ivy Hotel for a really expensive wedding reception, and I need the best keyboard player in town." And I said, "I've got her, so I'll call her." So I called Jeannie, and I said, "Jeannie, there's this great gig. It pays really well. You just only have to play for an hour in the middle of the afternoon." And I gave her the details, and she said, "Paul," now remember, she was 85 years old. She goes, "Paul, I'd love to, but I have 3 gigs that day."
Yeah, she showed the way, and to that end, to that point, Mary Jane and Prudence and Jerlyn, 2 of whom are grandmothers, and, you know, all in our 60s, like, just were singing. I mean, it's so extraordinary to work with people who just have it, know it, and because they've worked together so often, just blend so beautifully, and everybody gets to do what they do best.
Well, I tell people all the time, one of my favorite things in the world is lifer musicians. Because if you practice your art and you do the work, you only get better in time. Andre Segovia played until he was 94 years old.
Aw.
You know,
That's awesome.
so we still have 30 years left, hon. I can't wait to hear the song. But tell us a little bit more about the Soviet Union tour. What was that like? How long did it take? How many shows did you do?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I haven't talked about that for years, but it was actually thanks to another musician in Minneapolis, Larry Long. I called him up because I knew he had been, and so he hooked me up with some filmmakers that had liaison with a producer in the Soviet Union. So this was right in the beginning of Glasnost. This was the very first music production that was not state-sponsored. And it was this I think he was a little bit shady, a guy named Valier, who was the producer. And we did all the fundraising here. We did a big concert. We did a jingle for Lunds, and raised I think, $80,000 it took to bring 33 people. So it was 13 women that were at the band, many of their spouses. The bass player brought 5 of her 6 children. And then we had some, John Bream from the Star Tribune was there, and Debbie Bull covering it for the Pioneer Press. And anyway, we had quite a retinue, and stayed at a big state-owned hotel, the Rosia, I think, right by Red Square. And we did concerts in the green, I guess, Zeleony Park. It was an amphitheater in the sort of whatever the Central Park is in Moscow. And, Greg Iman and Joe Demko, the sound guys, were working with equipment that was a little bit challenging, But and then we went down to Sochi, which is on the Black Sea. We all know about it now because of the Olympics, but there was no Olympics there. Stayed in a roach-infested hotel. A lot of the women had never been out of the States, much less in some obscure Black Sea resort town in Russia. Did a concert on the beach there, and then they had a stadium. It looked like it was, anyway, a stadium, and half of a stadium. There were several thousand people there.
Wow.
And after everybody sang, somebody would race up to the stage with an armful of flowers. And
Oh,
they
fantastic.
especially went wild when Jerlyn Steele and Gwen Matthews did this sort of epic soul ballad, I Know You So Well. I think it might even be an ABBA song. I'm not sure. Anyway, and I think there were not many African-American people in Sochi ever, so they were just like, holy smokes. And anyway, so they just got armfuls and armfuls of flowers, and people went wild. Yeah,
We're
so when
talking
I was
with-
5 months pregnant and leading this
Wow.
group of 33 people, that's how I know when it was, because my son is 33 now.
Mary, we have our guest, Marion Moore, a shaker and mover in the Twin Cities arts community for decades, as she would say, is with us on the line. We've got a couple minutes left before we hear a track called the Happy Medley from Women and Cook back in the day. But speaking about, you just mentioned the 80 grand you raised. Talk about the money you need to raise to pay your lawyers and how people can access that, the web link so they can donate to this most worthy cause.
Yeah, so first of all, I would say at stopline3.org, you can find out all information that you want. And I think there are donation buttons there too. And Honor the Earth, honorearth.org. And yeah, it's a whole complex. I'm not tapped in specifically to the fundraising for the legal at this point, but I'm sure you can find it through those links.
I've got it right here, Marion. It's go to www.stopline3.org/drop the charges.
Great.
Marion,
Yeah, so this drop the charges, let me just say a little
go ahead.
moment about that, Paul. That be good?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I'm facing 6 charges. I have to travel
Jesus.
up to Aiken County. I have to pay my lawyer. I have to, and then these are charges for hundreds and hundreds of people that came to protect the water. And meanwhile, today is the 1-year anniversary of Enbridge going down and puncturing an aquifer, basically breaking the rules of their permit and not reporting. This is the DNR doesn't report it until June, or they don't report it to the DNR until June. The DNR doesn't make it public until September. Well, why isn't Enbridge facing charges? Why are hundreds of people who are protecting our resources, our sacred water, facing charges, and the perpetrator is running free, gets a little slap on the hand of, a couple $1 million. They only just supposedly plugged up the aquifer this week, a year of hundreds of thousands of gallons being, lost from this aquifer.
And let us not forget that Enbridge contributed $4.8 million to local law enforcement to round
Yeah, let
up.
me tell you how that worked. They had to, because of Standing Rock, Minnesota was like, well, we don't want to end up paying for all the law enforcement that's going to be required to prevent activists from water protectors from protecting the water. So they came up with an escrow account that the Public Utilities Commission would administer. And so, see, this means that, say, Sheriff Dan Guida from Aiken County is incentivized to spend whatever money he wants to over-police water protectors and get reimbursed. So what you have in effect is Enbridge has made a private security team out of all of the counties of Minnesota's law enforcement. This
Also
is
known,
wrong. It is unjust
al-
and it's undemocratic.
also known in the world as The Fix Is In. We are going to listen to a track from a while back from the Women Who Cook called The Happy Medley. Marion Moore, I want to thank you for being on the Wall of Power radio show. Let us know whatever else we can do as the fight continues. I applaud all of you for being so involved and putting literally your safety and your freedom on the line. My hat's off to all of you.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having us. Thanks for paying attention to this.
Hallelujah. 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 Oh, hallelujah. You know we're headed for the promised land. Come on, get happy. You got to wash all your sins away. Shout hallelujah. Come on, get happy. Get ready for the judgment day. The sun is shining. Come on, get happy. The Lord is waiting to take our hand. Sing hallelujah. Come on, get happy. We're going to the promised land. We're headed across the river. Wash your sins away in the tide. It's all so peaceful. On the other side, we're headed across the river. Hold your head up high till you find the bluebird of happiness. You will find greater peace of mind, knowing there's a bluebird of happiness. And when he sings to you, though you're deep in blue, you will see a ray of light creep through. And so remember this, life is no abyss. Once you find the bluebird of happiness, baby, do do what we do, baby. What you will see a ray of light creep through. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm blue. My disposition depends on you. I never mind all that rain from the skies, just as long as I can see all that love light in your eyes. Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Welcome back to the last set of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We're talking to a couple of women that are powerful forces not only in the Minnesota music community for decades, but they're also involved with the release of a great new version of Down to the River to Pray, the old gospel song performed by the reunited Women Who Cook. One of the prime movers in this project is an old friend of mine, and we probably haven't chatted in 20 or 25 years, but she was on the scene, on the West Bank music scene, in the Twin Cities music scene at large when I met her for the first time. And our guest now is Miss Barb With. Barb, how are you this evening?
Hi, Paul. I'm doing great. Thanks for having us on the show.
Oh, well, I'm a double Scorpio. I live in Duluth, 5 blocks from Lake Superior, and I grew up in northern Minnesota, near the Boundary Waters. I'm all about clean water, as everybody should be. Let's talk about how you got involved with this part of the fight to stop Line 3 and also the genesis of Down to the River to Pray?
Well, I had been fighting to protect the water in northern Wisconsin since 2011 when they wanted to put in a 22-mile open pit mountaintop removal iron ore mine on the shores of Lake Superior. So we had quite the stand for several years, and luckily they went away. But when northern Minnesota called, of course, I went out to Standing Rock, which was a whole life-changing experience. But when northern Minnesota called, me too, I grew up in Minneapolis and going up to the lakes up there. And I went and camped out all summer at Shell City Water Protector Camp, which was Winona Leduc, and White Earth Reservation. And so I was there primarily as a reporter. And I'd just like to interject this too for your listeners who want to know more about what is actually going on the ground up in northern Minnesota. You're not going to find it in the Star Tribune. You have to go to the Wisconsin Citizens Media Co-op. That's WCM Co-op, COOP.org. And we've been reporting on it on the ground since then. So being out there and hanging out with Winona, and they came to me one night, the holy man, Hoka and Winona, and said, will you come to the river and pray with us tomorrow? And I said, of course I will. So we chained ourselves up very specifically with the hope to bring this message as far as we can to get the world to understand what's happening to the headwaters of the Mississippi and all of these rivers up north. So we all got arrested, 7 of us after being on the easement for about 3 hours, and this was quite a life-changing experience for me. I walked away from that whole thing, and then 2.5 days in jail together, kind of a changed woman. But so while we were in jail, Winona, we were all together, the 7 of us in a cell, and one day Winona started singing this song, what's that song? Down to the River to Pray. What are the words to it? And nobody really knew the words or the structure of the song, but we knew we wanted to rewrite it because you got a lot of time, when you're sitting there.
Sure.
And our jailer came in and he'd been watching us on the video camera, which I'm sure they all did because we were pretty funny, but he handed us the lyrics, the original lyrics to Down in the River to Pray. And he stepped back out. What?
I said, bless that guy.
He stepped outside the door and he said, this is my last 2 days as a jailer. I'm going to be a history teacher. But you ladies rock, and I don't care what they do to me. So we rewrote it then. And then it was only after I got out talking to Marion, didn't seem like more than a couple weeks ago, but time flies she had got arrested and she had been singing the song Down by the River. And so when we talked about how to make this awareness, how to cross-pollinate the airwaves, why not do the song, bring in the women who cook, because holy smokes, are they fantastic still. And
right.
The whole thing has been one totally magical journey from Scotty Miller and Sierra Hill on strings and Scotty on piano, and going into the studio. And there's something, because when we were on that easement and we were praying, we had a Sundance drummer and singing these songs down actually in the river while we were up on the easement facing these 5 law enforcement officers who were just standing there staring straight ahead, doing nothing for 3 hours. But that something happened in that vortex of an afternoon. And one of the reasons they arrested us, we'd been there for 3 hours. They never told us to leave. They never said anything to us except, you're good right there. I think that's the only thing they said. But it was the drought of the year, everyone remembers, with no rain in sight. But we had done a prayer for rain in the morning. And we were telling them that we had done this. We were telling the officers. And sure enough, the sky clouds up, and pretty soon it is a full-blown thunderstorm, lightning. And then that's when they decided they had to arrest us because they didn't want to stand in the rain. They were fine standing there. But
they were fine making their triple time sitting on the dry shore, right?
Exactly. They were making, Enbridge was paying their salary to stand there looking over us. So, and they, while we were there, they heard in 3 hours, if you know Winona LaDuke at all, they heard some of the most precise information about climate change, about the regulatory processes. They heard it all. So anyway, they had to call the special unit with the special tools to cut off our big fat chain. We had chained ourselves all together. And anyway, so that was really, because people go to do, and you know this, people go to do actions. Everybody has to have their own comfort zone, And there were people who wanted to go out and chain themselves to machines. And we represent, when we're trying to get these charges dropped for all the 400 plus water protectors. But that was, I always am so honored to know people who can do that. But so this was my way, where we weren't chained to a machine, we were chained to each other. And we were praying, and our whole intent is to bring this to a bigger audience.
And you were, you were actually spiritually chained to each other through this this point in the journey. I have been an admirer of Winona LaDuke like forever.
Right.
I'd look, her and Elizabeth Warren, president, VP, who's ever on, number one, number two, wouldn't matter to me. But tell people out there who've just heard Winona's name, what sort of a spiritual force and a presence and the intelligence she brings to any situation she's involved with.
Well, Winona is White Earth, Anishinaabe, and she's also, I think, Harvard
Harvard
in economics. And she ran as vice president with Ralph Nader all those years ago. But her soul is this amazing combination of the Anishinaabe way, completely connected to the earth, and that whole worldview, and the economics of it. So for her whole push through her water protector calling as Anishinaabe, our born water protectors, she's been able to bring this brilliant economic edge to it. And even now, she's decided to become a demonstration of the new green economy. She's got her hemp farm and the solar stuff that's going on, and she's about to buy, I think, a bottle washing plant in Superior. And so she really puts her money where her mouth is, honor the earth. And honestly, Paul, I mean, I bet most of, and I've known Winona for a long time, but still every day I stand in awe of her. She's just one of the most amazing women on the planet. And so we're in this jail cell, and some of us were like, we're in jail with Winona LaDuke. Like, oh my God, she's right there, sleeping in this bunk above me. So yeah, she's fabulous. Everyone should look her up and research her. She's just so inspiring.
She's a true visionary. We have my old friend Barb With, who is involved with this great new release that we're doing the worldwide debut tonight, Down to the River to Pray, with a Reunited Women Who Cook. We'll hear at the end of the show. I want to remind people, if they want to, and everybody should, contribute some dollars to the campaign to drop the charges and pay legal fees for these strong and brave women, go to www.stopblind3.org/drop the charges. Before I forget, and remind me before we play the song, how can people access the song once it's been mastered and they'll hear it tonight?
Well, that we'll have to figure that out. We were actually making this as it's going to be the soundtrack for, I'm calling it a public service announcement, but it's kind of a short documentary about why we need to drop these charges. And this is the whole impetus of what we're doing right now. We got to get all these charges dropped for these people who should be heroes to stand up to this rogue multinational corporation that captured our regulatory process and is ruining the water up north. So
People don't realize, it makes me so angry, Barb, with it. People don't realize, between Lake Superior, all the other lakes in Minnesota, and the boundary waters, we have about 15% of the world's fresh water supply. And yet people want to put that in danger with copper nickel mining, this the Line 3 pipeline and the rest. And it's like, don't you realize there's droughts all over the world? The whole world's a water crisis. Water is actually the next oil, and that's will be the fights and wars in the coming years sooner than we'd like to think. First of all, thank you again. I want to thank you personally, Barb, for getting involved with this. Now, tell us, Marion Moore told us a little bit about how the words came about, but tell us once again, for somebody who was writing the words, what was that process?
Well, the original, when the jailer brought us the lyrics words, was the 7 of us who were in jail together with a lot to do, sitting around and just, Paul, I don't even know the original words. I just know these words. And then that was last summer, we were arrested on July 19th. So when we were going to do this project and Winona said, call Marion, I gave them to her and she took them and she really did a really nice job of, because it's kind of a repetitive song. It could get a little row, row, row your boaty if you don't watch it. But she added some just beautiful nuances and messages. And then David Mellick, who is producing it, he and I tweaked it just a bit, and it's just, I think it's perfect. It's truly a grassroots effort.
Well, and I've known Scotty Bones Miller for 25 or 30 years, really watched him come into his own as a songwriter and a performer. You couldn't have had a better keyboard player on this project.
Oh, I know. And I'm at the studio now, and we're going to be mixing it and getting it to you.
Oh, well,
right.
I'm honored. I'm honored to give us the chance to give it the worldwide debut. Give my best to everybody there. Barb With, are you still playing? Well, there's not many places to play these days, but what does the Barb With music career look like in 2022?
After doing this song, something has been revived in me. I dropped out of the full-time playing to go be an author and a workshop facilitator, and so I've been traveling around doing that. But I really getting into this time in our life, Paul. We're getting into this time in our life, and I really am going to I'd love to do some recording projects with people like Scotty Miller. Holy smokes!
Yeah,
I've got so many songs I'd love to. Yeah.
Well, you were, when I moved to Minneapolis in '78, and you were around that whole scene with our good friend who I got turned on, Barry Goldberg. There was the DJ, Blueberry Bill Hood, and Paul Strickland. Name a few of those bring a few other names out of the dustbin of history to remind Paul Metsa.
Oh my gosh. Mark Gaddis, Lonnie Knight.
Mark Gaddis, Lonnie Knight, yes.
Kristen Erickson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you, when I got, when publicist extraordinary Marty Keller got a hold of me about this project, and I knew all the names that were in the Old Women and the Cook, the people like you that are part of this new thing, I was reminded about what a beautiful music community we've shared together over 4 decades.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. And you should have been here when those women were here together, and everybody left just kind of verklempt You know, the women who came and took over. When you hear these tracks, you'll know exactly what I mean when you hear those voices have been singing together for over 40 years. And they came in and they just shaped that chorus. It sounds like we got the Mormon Tabernacle Choir behind us, and everyone was, you know, Mary Jane reached out later and was like, oh my gosh, that was so important. And people want to do something about this and the water. People want to know what to do. So, yeah.
And for you know, thousands of years, whether they get credit or not, women are leading the charge. So I salute and applaud all of you. And it's so, you know, the Mary Jane Alm, Prudence Johnson, Geraldine Steele, those names are like part of the DNA, musical and psychic fabric of the Minnesota scene, and it's more powerful now than ever.
Yep.
So, Barb With, I number one, it's really fun to talk to you again. Are you still in Wisconsin?
You know, I'm down in Minneapolis for the winter. So I'm going to be here hanging around, poking around, and then back up to Madeline Island when the season opens up.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, keep me posted about books you've authored, projects you're doing. I want to keep the Barb With Paul Metsa bat line open again.
Yes, yay.
It's so great to talk to you. Barb With, so tell us now the voices in the reconstituted Woman Who Cooks. So who's the voices we're going to be hearing on Down to the River to Pray?
I'm actually singing the lead on it, and then Mary Jane Alm and Prudence Johnson and Geraldine Steele and Marianne Moore also sang, and Winona LaDuke. I got to have her first recording session experience.
That's my personal Mount Rushmore of cool and artistic women.
Right, exactly. We're so lucky.
We had such a pleasure speaking with Marianne Moore earlier in the show, and we're now with Barb With. Once again, help these women pay their legal fees, help them move to have the state and localities drop the charges. Go to stopline3.org/drop the charges. And now we at the Wall of Power Radio Hour on AM 950 are really honored to introduce, that's Blue in the background, my dog. We are proud to give the worldwide debut of the song Down to the River to Pray by Women Who Cook. Barb, have a great evening, and thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
Gonna go down in the river to pray, studying in Anishinaabe way, and who'll protect the wild rice creator, show us the way. Oh sisters, let's go down, come on down. Oh sisters, let's go down in the river to pray. Gonna go down in the river to pray, studying in Anishinaabe way, and who will kill the black snake now? Great Spirit, show us the way. Oh brothers, let's go down, let's go shut that pipeline down. Come on brothers, let's go down in the river to pray. Gonna go down in the river to pray, studying an Anishinaabe way, and who'll protect the water now? Great Spirit, show us the way. Oh, fathers, let's go down. Let's go shut that pipeline down. Come on, drop the charges now and come down in the river to pray. We went down in the river to pray, studying an Anishinaabe way, and we'll protect the wild rice. Great Spirit, show us the way. Oh, mothers, let's go down. Come on, shut that black snake down. Come on, mothers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. Oh, mothers, let's go down. Come on, shut that black snake down. Come on, mothers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. We went down in the river to pray, studying an Anishinaabe way, and we protect the water now. Great Spirit, show us the way. Oh, Enbridge, let's go down. Let's go shut your pipeline down. Oh, Enbridge, let's go down, down in the river to pray. We went down in the river to pray, studying an Anishinaabe way, and we protect our future now. Great Spirit, show us the way.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show is produced by Paul Metza, engineered by Brett Johnson. Our guests tonight were Marion Moore and Barb With. Help these women with their legal fees and help them drop the charges. Go to stopline3.org/drop the charges. I have a new book coming out called Alphabet Jazz, probably out in March. Go to paulmetza.com to track that. And remember, like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.
The high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power broken.